Alright, welcome back to Rarest Photos. I have in my hand a continuation of what we've been reading. Probably not enough, unfortunately. I'm sorry that I haven't read this as much lately. It was pretty sad, depressing, and I don't know. I think reading some of those sections, like I have, made it difficult to want to read more. By the way, thank you very much for the super thanks. I'm going to go ahead and put it right here. Got a couple super thanks that came in, I think, today and yesterday. Very kind of you. I appreciate that. Thank you to the members, to the subscribers, to all of you commenting and reading along with me. This is fun. We're having a good time, aren't we? At least I am. And I see your suggestions for different books to read, and I've been buying a lot of books, as you can tell. And I'll be reading more and more. I'm going to get the Linda Thompson book. I've got a special book coming, a surprise, that's going to throw y'all for a little bit of a loop, I think. In a positive way, I think. But let's get to reading, okay? I wanted to bring you some of this. I've still got, I've got a busy afternoon and evening. I've got a conversation with Billy Stanley this evening, and then that'll be on the channel tomorrow. I'm excited about it. I hope it's going to be a multi-part conversation with him. Not just a one-time thing, but we're going to talk hopefully several times. We're still reading The Faith of Elvis. We also have this one, which we haven't started reading yet. At some point we will. That one is, oh, I'm sorry. Gosh, I grabbed the wrong book, but we're going to read that one too. Elvis, My Brother, An Intimate Family Memoir, Life with the King, Billy Stanley. This came out in, let's see here, 1989. So 2 years after Are You Lonesome Tonight came out. 4 years after Elvis and Me, the Priscilla. I'm going to call it a book, whatever. The Priscilla thing. So let's get to reading. There's a Bluebird in My Heart, Chapter 4. I had heard a lot about Danny Keough. He was 21 years old when I met him, and I had just turned 17. He was in LA from Oregon and was the bass player in a band named DeBat. That's D''B''A''T, like baseball bat. They'd play small gigs around town, and they were really all cute and had a following. And all the girls were in love with Danny especially. They were in love with the lead singer too, a guy named Alex. But Alex was not as cool or as rugged as Danny, and Alex liked himself a lot. A lot. We used to tease Alex because he would constantly be checking his own reflection in the back of the spoons. I heard later that all the guys in DeBat had a crush on me, but I wasn't paying attention. I've always been really stupid about stuff like that. I don't assume, and I had zero self-confidence back then. And as soon as I heard someone was a heartbreaker or a ladies' man or a womanizer, well, I put my guard up. I had already guarded, but I'd put an extra layer if I felt like someone was an a-hole. Especially what happened with the older boyfriend who sold the photos. I had those defenses, but I could also be like a really silly girl, like a schoolgirl. I was still living at the Celebrity Center, though I was also transitioning to living back with my mother. So 17 at that point. I threw a birthday party for myself at the Rose Garden Cafe out in the back of the center, and that was the first time that I was in the same room with Danny. Our first interaction was just a brief drive-by, and I forgot about it. About a week later, I had fully moved back into my mom's house, and all those same people from the Rose Garden party were going to dinner at the Mustache Cafe on Melrose. Danny was there, and he was making these comments that were bugging me. I thought he was arrogant and super confident. I would respond, and I could tell that I annoyed him. Now, for y'all that are kind of newer Elvis fans, maybe newer Lisa Marie fans, maybe kind of new to this channel and kind of new to the whole story of all this stuff, Danny Keough here is Riley Keough's dad. not Harper and Finley. That would be the strange-looking hat guy, Michael Lockwood. Michael Lockwood, that was suing Lisa for more money, for more child support, so he could live a much higher off-the-hog life. I still don't like that guy. Now, have I given him a second chance? I haven't seen anything to give him a second chance over. We talk about this, right? And we just talked about the whole Michael Stone thing. Or Mike Stone thing. But anyways, back to this book. Thought he was arrogant and super confident. I would respond and I could tell. I could tell I've been reading too much. I'm sorry. Let's see here. I would respond and I could tell that I annoyed him. That night, we all ended up at a party in Hollywood Hills. And when the birthday cake came out in front of everybody, I smeared some icing on him, and he took some and put it on my cheek, and then he licked it off. I freaked out. I thought that it was just a healthy antagonistic banter, but I found out later that he was on a mission. I told him that he wasn't boyfriend material, and that made him want to pursue me. And the cockier and less interested he seemed, the more I found myself smitten with him. I was with a friend who was living with me at my mom's house. She walked out of the party in the hills ahead of me. I went out to look for her and caught her planting a kiss on Danny. He pushed her away. And I could tell they were having words, but I found myself angry thinking, Danny, you're such a pig. You were just in there macking on me and then I walk out here and you're kissing my friend. A couple weeks later, he told me that my friend had totally blindsided him, probably doing it on purpose because she knew I would be coming out to look for her. Danny was mortified. The Bat, the group, dressed in new romantic style with earrings, silk blouses, necklaces, bandanas, and feathers. My dad had incredible charisma. Okay, so this is Riley Keough talking about her dad. My dad had incredible charisma. Everyone talked about him. He was very handsome. Rode a bright red Kawasaki GPZ 550, and all the girls loved him. And like my mom, he couldn't care less about fame. He was maybe even allergic to it, just like she was. Now, the first time my dad laid eyes on my mom, he was fixing his motorcycle, and she was walking across the Celebrity Center parking lot with her mother. She was wearing a black leather jacket, and he thought, who is that person with such attitude? Their eyes met as she passed, and he felt that she had looked right into him. Now, my dad was a jazz guy, and he didn't know that Elvis even had a daughter, let alone this young woman in the black leather jacket that was that child. The next time he saw her was at Mustache Cafe. Now, my parents didn't hit it off at first. So you think you're hot shit, huh? My mom said that night, with a nod to his reputation. He just thought she was aloof. But he thought, too, that this little creature at the end of the table had such power and presence, and it was nothing to do with being the child of Elvis Presley. In fact, they would have zero conversations about Elvis throughout their relationship. He knew that she felt the loss deeply, but she never mentioned it. Danny, Keough, and Lisa never talked about Elvis. Zero conversations about Elvis throughout their relationship. Wow. Maybe part of the reason why they didn't work out. I mean, you just can't not talk about that kind of stuff. Even if, to Riley's defense of her dad, said that he knew that she felt the loss deeply, but she never mentioned it. He knew immediately that she didn't feel the need to impress anybody, but he also found her unbelievably physically stunning. Plus, she had an intensity that he was drawn to. The playful rat-a-tat continued through dinner until he thought, I kind of like this person. He said that he developed a crush on her because of her unobtainable qualities. My dad says she didn't just lay down and agree with stuff. She was really fiery and would hold her own in a real way, not just being contentious. I liked the verbal sword fighting. When she said I wasn't boyfriend material, well, that made me want her more. Lisa comes back here. I was never someone who had a propensity for quick relationships or one night stands. If I'm into someone, I'm into someone. And if I'm not, I'm not. Hot or cold. After another party a little while later, I drove Danny home to his place. He was renting a room in some weird part of LA like Highland Park. His roommate, a 23-year-old woman, was in the witness protection program because she had turned on a major drug dealer in Denver. I remember going into his room and we were hanging out, talking, and I spent the night there. Nothing happened. We didn't have sex or anything. I just laid with him and we were sort of making out and talking. Now, I stayed into the wee hours of the morning and then I drove home alone. Now, this is Riley. My dad remembers that night a bit differently. We had some drinks and we were wrestling, throwing stuff around, and we knocked an old closet down and broke it. But my roommate couldn't be mean about anything because she was in hiding. No, not that differently, right? After that, Danny and I solidified into a relationship. Back to Lisa. I was still being really careful. Like, he'd left a trail of broken hearts. He'd always broken up with a woman, and they'd stay in love with him. His longest relationship had been 6 weeks. He was so young, but I was even younger, so he was still more together than I was. I was trying to turn my life around, seriously buckling down, starting to put my shit together, coming out of the crazy phase in my early experimentation with substances. I hadn't been a substance addict. I had just been super curious and would do whatever came along. I guess it was just really rebellion. You must have something bigger than the rush that substances give you, bigger than the feeling, bigger than the happiness, bigger than that emptiness. And that's what I was starting to develop. I wanted to know what the heck I was doing here. I wanted to know about life. I wanted to know about people. I didn't want to mess around anymore. Now, these are the F words. I'm just changing the words around. She spoke a lot more strongly like in the book. But I wasn't just going to get a job and put food on the table and be content. I needed answers. Let's read a little bit more here. I found Danny's confidence and his cockiness attractive. Now, I tend to be attracted to strong alpha males. I probably get that from my dad. My father was very much the alpha, and I'm totally a daddy's girl. But even though I'm really a strong female, that doesn't mean that I want to wear the pants or be the shot caller. I don't mind if someone takes that role. Well, Danny and I lasted about 4 months initially. It was definitely the longest he'd ever had, but I worried that Danny had a wandering eye. He could be a slippery son of a bee. Hard to keep a hold of. I was completely head over heels in love with him. Buddy got a crush on some Italian girl who didn't speak any English and had hairy armpits. And we were kind of over after that. But I always felt like I was hanging on to him. After we broke up, I was heartbroken for 2 years. Stuck on him. Stuck and obsessed. I was one of those girls. I didn't want anybody to know it, but I was obsessed with him. The Italian girl had been a temporary thing, but I was so devastated. You could mop me up off the floor. You could not even mop me up off the floor, actually. Meanwhile, I would date other uninteresting time passers. One was Brock, the bug squasher, a guy who would literally get off on a dropping potato bugs and watching them splatter. It would actually give him a rise. Think about the lower area. That's what she said. That was gross, but Brock was also really good looking and in AA. I just used the bug squasher to tick Danny off. But all the people I dated knew I was actually in love with this guy, Danny, that I was still holding the torch for him. Now, I didn't know what I wanted, except that I wanted to be with Danny. And I knew that I needed to have children with Danny too, which is the weirdest, craziest part of it all. I felt like I was supposed to have children with him. I somehow knew that we would always be connected, that it would always be okay, that it would never be a bad situation for a child. And I feel horrific. This is me talking. I feel horrific that I left Ben out of that when I said this is Riley's dad. We know Ben's no longer with us. But Danny was Ben's dad and Lisa was Ben's mom. And I should have, I don't know why, I'm a little tired. got up early. Been working since it's been, I don't know, maybe 6, 8, 9 hours straight now. I've been doing something work-wise, and I'm not done. And I'm one of those kind of people that I get up, start working, and even when I'm watching a TV show, a lot of times I'm still working. I try to take time away from that, with my wife and my kids, but life is a busy life. Probably got that from Elvis. I made it past him age-wise, but part of that has to do with I didn't have all the stuff in my genes for illnesses like he did, I'm guess, and substances I just don't mess around. Not like I didn't do anything at all when I was perhaps younger. We'll talk about that some other time. I mean, get lucky I'm alive, right? Really am. I live with a carny. I worked at a carnival too. Had earrings. But I lived with a carny, and he was an addict. He was a pill addict, and yeah, interesting. I'll tell this story some other time. It's not for this book. But let's finish this little section. Danny moved away from LA for a while, and whenever he came back, my antennas would be trained on him. I'd seen him at parties, and he would destroy me, especially if he showed up with a girl. I couldn't tell that he was thinking about me. It was like a cat and mouse game for a while. I'd show up at a party with a guy, knowing Danny would be there. I was 1,000% being conniving and manipulative and calculating. I would watch Danny see me with a guy, and his whole disposition would change. He'd be visibly bummed. His energy would drop. But I still didn't really think he gave a hoot. Riley says she chased him for 2 years. There was no shame in her. But he was just afraid of her fame, and he was running from the phenomenon of her. He knew she would be his destruction. He was not afraid of much when he was younger, but she scared the living hoot out of him. He felt like a minnow in an ocean of sharks, and he was just a bass player. This was way too big. That's where we're going to stop. Okay, I wanted to get some of the reading in here. I'm going to try to pop another couple books out for y'all as well. Yeah, so beautiful picture of Riley and Lisa on the back. I wish there was a picture of Ben with them. I know Ben is gone, and it's painful for Riley. There's really not many pictures actually in this book. A couple here and there. But you would have thunk that Lisa would have wanted pictures. A lot of pictures in this book. Alright. There are some pictures of her and Michael and a few others, and we'll show them later on. But we're ending this on page 109. Got to put something in there so I know where to end at. Anyhow, TCB TLC until next time. This is Rare Rivers Photos. I appreciate all of y'all very much, more than you know. And looking forward to the next books, the next conversations, and reading the next comments. And singing the next songs over at Elvis and the Legends. Alright, until next time.